Welcome to Geoscope, where we map out the forces reshaping industries worldwide. Today, we're tracking a seismic shift in the automotive world. In a surprise move, Germany's power trio, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Audi, are steering out of the US market, pressured by President Trump's steep import tariffs. This isn't just a story about cars, it's about jobs, supply chains, and a global race to control the next era of mobility. Let's break down the 5 developments driving this high-stakes standoff. It began not with a formal declaration or a diplomatic cable, but with an unannounced tweet fired off in the early morning hours. In less than 280 characters, a new front in a global trade war was opened, and the automotive world was its first major battlefield. The digital proclamation sent an immediate shockwave through the industry, bypassing decades of established diplomatic and commercial protocols. Invoking national security concerns under a little-known trade law from 1962, the administration imposed a staggering 25% tariff on imported vehicles and their essential parts. The message was blunt, a stark ultimatum broadcast to the world: if you don't build here, you don't sell here. It was protectionism in its most direct form, a policy sledgehammer aimed at forcing a realignment of a global industry that had been built on the very principle of free and open trade. For Germany's big 3 automakers, BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, the announcement was an earthquake. In boardrooms across Munich, Stuttgart, and Ingolstadt, phones rang off the hook. The carefully calibrated financial models that had guided their American strategies for decades were now, in an instant, a financial minefield. The policy's brutal irony was felt most acutely in the American South. BMW's plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina, the largest BMW factory in the world and a massive exporter of American-made SUVs, was caught in the crossfire. The same was true for the Mercedes-Benz plant in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. These weren't just assembly lines, they were global SUV hubs, but they relied on a steady flow of high-tech components from Europe: engines, transmissions, electronics. Suddenly, the cost of building their American cars skyrocketed. Audi, along with its parent Volkswagen Group, faced an even more direct threat. With no dedicated Audi plant on US soil at the time, every single vehicle they sold was an import. The 25% tariff wasn't just on parts, it was on the entire value of every car arriving at the port. They were staring down the barrel of a crippling tax that threatened to make their entire product line uncompetitive overnight. The choice was impossible: pass the cost on to the consumer and risk sending loyal buyers to competitors. A $60,000 car could suddenly become a $75,000 car. Or absorb the multi-billion-dollar hit and watch profits, shareholder value, and future R&D budgets evaporate. Meanwhile, the intricate just-in-time supply chains, perfected over decades and stretching from Germany to Mexico, began to fracture. These weren't simple parts you could source locally, they were proprietary systems, the very heart of the vehicles. While diplomats scrambled, the gears of commerce were already grinding to a halt. At ports, containers filled with critical components sat idle, tangled in a web of new regulations and financial uncertainty. At dealerships, orders were delayed and deliveries froze as the entire system seized up. Ambitious multi-billion-dollar expansion plans, once celebrated as proof of a strong partnership, were quietly shelved, then vanished from the books. This wasn't just a tariff, it was a fundamental breach of trust. For decades, these companies had poured billions into the American economy, building factories and creating jobs based on the promise of stable, predictable trade. The tariff shock signaled that those promises were no longer guaranteed. What looked like a simple policy move was, in practice, a direct assault on decades of planning and investment. It was the moment the United States began to look less like a reliable partner and more like a volatile risk, the first decisive downhill turn for its automotive future. The decision to withdraw wasn't a contained event, limited to the factory gates. It was the epicenter of an economic earthquake, sending shockwaves deep into the fabric of American communities. Modern automotive manufacturing is a vast, intricate ecosystem. When a central pillar like a major assembly plant is removed, the entire structure begins to tremble. The impact radiates outward, far beyond the industrial parks of the Southeast, touching lives and livelihoods in towns and cities across the nation. This is the ripple effect, a cascade of consequences that demonstrates just how interconnected our economy truly is. Consider a single powerful example: BMW's plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Before the pullout, this facility was an economic engine, directly and indirectly supporting over 43,000 American jobs. These weren't just assembly line positions, but a whole spectrum of employment, from engineers and logistics coordinators to cafeteria workers and security guards. The plant's total economic output was a staggering $26.7 billion annually, more than the entire GDP of dozens of countries. This single facility was a cornerstone of the regional economy, and its absence left a void that was impossible to fill, and BMW was not alone. Mercedes-Benz in Alabama and the vast network supporting Audi and Volkswagen contributed billions more. This economic web extended into every corner of the country, and suddenly, it was being torn apart. At the consumer level, over 1,200 German brand dealerships faced an immediate crisis. With parts supplies choked by tariffs, prices for service and used cars skyrocketed. Customers found their warranties, once a guarantee of quality, were now uncertain promises. But the deeper damage was happening up the supply chain. Over 2,500 American suppliers were cut adrift. A family-owned machine shop in Ohio, a software firm in California, overnight, their largest contracts vanished. For many, it was a death sentence. The irony was devastating. A policy intended to protect American industry was crippling its most successful export sector. The U.S. had become a premier location for building high-end vehicles for the global market. The BMW plant in South Carolina, for instance, was the company's largest exporter by value worldwide. But with retaliatory tariffs from Europe and China, the price of a US-built BMW X5 in Shanghai or Berlin soared. Projected losses for just two models topped $15 billion, part of an estimated $45 billion hit to the wider auto export industry. Instead of protecting jobs, the tariffs dismantled a world-class export operation, tarnishing the Made in the USA brand, and unraveling decades of investment in innovation and global competitiveness. While Washington hit the brakes, Beijing opened the throttle. Mercedes unveiled its next-gen EV platform in China, not America. BMW started building a mega factory in Chengdu. Audi signed deals with Chinese tech giants and set up R&D hubs in Shanghai and Shenzhen. China offered scale, incentives, and policy consistency, a showroom on every corner, while US trade policy delivered turbulence. Even design studios and autonomous driving software moved overseas. The next wave of German vehicles may not just be made in China, but conceived there from start to finish, shifting global innovation and prestige eastward. For decades, the American automotive landscape was a battleground, with Detroit's titans constantly clashing with their German counterparts. So when the German automakers began their strategic withdrawal, a collective sigh of relief seemed to echo from the boardrooms of Ford and General Motors. It felt like a decisive victory on home turf, a chance to reclaim market share. But this initial euphoria was short-lived. The very same protectionist tariffs were about to reveal a painful truth about the modern global economy: no one operates in a vacuum. The modern automobile is a complex global puzzle, and Detroit's automakers discovered that many of their most critical pieces were sourced from abroad. We're not talking about simple nuts and bolts. These were the high-tech brains of the vehicle, the engine control units, or ECUs, the advanced battery packs essential for the burgeoning EV market, and the countless electronic modules that control everything from safety systems to infotainment. Suddenly, these vital parts were subject to heavy import duties. Ford's internal analysis was staggering, projecting an additional $1.5 billion in annual costs. The financial shockwave spread quickly. GM, Stellantis, and even the remaining operations of Volkswagen were forced to slash their earnings forecasts, citing the unprecedented market instability. Beyond the immediate financial pain, a more insidious, long-term threat began to emerge: the specter of innovation stagnation. For years, the relentless pace of German engineering served as a crucial catalyst for the entire industry. Think of BMW's groundbreaking work in performance hybrid powertrains, or Audi's revolutionary virtual cockpit, which completely redefined the driver's instrument cluster. Consider the sophisticated luxury and driver assistance technologies pioneered by Mercedes-Benz. This constant high-stakes competition forced American engineers to push their own boundaries. With their primary challengers retreating, the risk wasn't just losing sales rivals, it was losing the very pressure that sharpens the competitive edge. On paper, the departure of Mercedes-Benz and BMW left a vacuum at the top of the luxury market. a golden opportunity for America's own premium brands, Cadillac and Lincoln. But brand prestige is an intangible asset, built not just with steel and silicon but with decades of consistent perception and cultural significance. A German badge on the hood carries a weight of history that can't be replicated overnight. Building that kind of global cachet is the work of generations, not a single product cycle. Ultimately, the German exodus didn't hand Detroit a clear victory, instead it triggered a period of profound disruption. For Detroit, the result isn't a windfall, it's a fundamental reshaping of the industry with deeply uncertain consequences. What began as a single policy has rattled global trade. The EU, Germany in particular, viewed the tariffs as a direct strike. Retaliatory measures are already in motion, while the UK seeks limited deals with Washington. Manufacturers are pivoting. The old model, build where it's cheap, is giving way to build where it's stable. Regional hubs are growing, but efficiency and affordability may suffer. Many supply chains are now rerouting to Asia, especially China, where German automakers are planting deep roots. Predictability is becoming the most valuable currency in the auto business. Final lap. Can America regain traction? The departure of BMW, Mercedes, and Audi is more than logos vanishing from US roads. It's a warning about fractured policy, lost prestige, and a fast-changing balance of power. For US automakers, survival depends on investing in cutting-edge tech, securing stable supply chains, staying competitive in design and quality. For policymakers, bold strategy must replace impulsive moves. The world isn't waiting. So, what's your take? Did tariffs strengthen or weaken the US auto sector? Can Detroit truly fill the luxury gap? Will China become the new heart of global automotive innovation? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to Geoscope, your destination for deep dives into the forces driving industries and economies worldwide. Hit the bell so you never miss a shift in the story. Thanks for watching. Explore the videos on screen for more insights.